Ladies, have you been wanting to make a change, but you don't feel ready? Here's the truth. Readiness is a lie. The model of confidence for women is backward, and we need to flip it. I'm Cara Moeller-Poppitt, author of a new book, Big Freaking Change. After coaching thousands of women, I discovered action gives us confidence, not the other way around. If we wait to feel ready, we'll wait forever. So if you're ready to get unstuck and step into the life you've always dreamed about, visit bigfreakingchange.com right now and order your copy. Welcome to the Big Freaking Change podcast, where we dive deep into the stories of those who took bold action, embraced uncertainty, and transformed their lives without ever feeling ready. I'm your host, Cara Moeller-Poppitt, author of The Big Freaking Change and the creator of the Get Unstuck Cycle of Change model. Each week, we'll sit down with remarkable individuals who have taken bold steps in their lives, personally and professionally, to make meaningful change. Whether you're seeking a career shift, personal growth, or a boost in confidence, our goal is to inspire you to stop waiting and start taking action. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Big Freaking Change. I'm your host, Cara Moeller-Poppitt, and we are talking to amazing and remarkable individuals that have gone through significant change, big freaking changes, here to share their wisdom and inspiration with all of us. It's a true delight to welcome my friend, Jenny Lynne Erickson, to the show today. Welcome, Jenny.
Well, thank you so much, Cara. I'm so glad to be here.
Yes, you always have such great energy. I got the chance to visit you in Phoenix, Arizona, where you're located, and you did some amazing energy work on me. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. And I just wanted to tell the listeners all about you. So I'm going to read your bio to give you a nice little introduction. From scaling corporate ladders to navigating a successful business exit, all while solo parenting, Jenny intimately understands the exhausting dance of living everywhere, but here in the present moment, in spreadsheets, in endless to-do lists, in the relentless chatter of an overactive mind. She discovered a profound truth. Our bodies are not just vessels to carry us through life. They are home. And in order to come back home, it needs to be safe. Now, through her unique blend of life integration coaching, energy work, and herbalism, Jenny guides others back to themselves, back to their bodies, helping them discover that sacred place where presence replaces pressure and where fulfillment and performance flow. Jenny, I love this last line where presence replaces pressure. Let's start there. So tell me about it, when presence replaces pressure.
Well, a lot of times we spend our lives, right, living with pressures that we place on ourselves or pressures that we feel have been placed on ourselves by others. And I always say we feel, because pressure is what we choose it to be. It doesn't always, feel that way, but we actually can choose how much pressure we take from the outside and from our situation. And when we live there, we're not here. We're constricted. Everything from affecting our heart rates. Have you ever just felt that binding around you? Or maybe it shows up in your digestive system or your throat where it just feels tight. But that pressure ends up becoming physically manifested in our body. And when we can release that, we can actually be here. I can be with you.
I love that. What made you realize that? Talk to me about how you came to that profound awareness.
Not being here. At some point, our bodies just get so wired up from the constant pressure from the outside, the constant noise, the constant, it's everything from in our own heads to the way we react to what's going on around us, the number of emails in our inbox and how it makes us feel. When we have 100 items on our to-do list, does it make us feel tight, or can we just say, we'll get to what we get to and the rest will, fade. But years and years of living that ended up becoming, I was really good at creating systems to compensate for it, but I didn't realize how much I was hiding, how much I didn't realize until I went through some personal tragedies. And through that process, I kind of got to the edge of my own capability. What is my edge of pressure where I break? And we all kind of have that edge and it's at a different line and a different spot. but it's where it all stacked up. And I had been completely ignoring physical issues like my feet. And my podiatrist couldn't do anything. He's like, I don't even know how to treat you. You have so many hot spots in your feet, and digestive issues and headaches. I was popping ibuprofen and Tylenol. I know it's different in Canada, but over the counter, pills to help with headaches and all of that stuff for so long. And nobody really knew what to do or could help me. I just thought this was normal and part of getting older. And I didn't realize that actually it was just a lifetime of built up pressure that I hadn't taken the time to figure out how to relieve.
I love that you shared that awareness. And it's true, right? We go through life, we kind of think different things are normal. Oh, I'll just create new systems. I'll multitask. I'll hire things out. And I think as working women too, there's something to be said about that, because we are usually the force, keeping the children organized, the house neat, the meals, all of the things that go on, and then running a full-time job. Sometimes there's a lot of pressure in us. I can definitely relate to that. Jenny, you mentioned you had personal tragedy, and you can share as much or as little as you wish on that. But I would love to kind of talk about the awakening or the awareness, and how, usually when we have tragedy, it's like we unfold another layer of ourselves. We get clear, we have a perspective shift. We realize how precious our energy is, that we have to protect our energy, and kind of the realizations that occurred for you.
Yeah, I had multiple points along the way. And what I like to tell people is that realizations can occur in the form of both pleasure and pain. So don't forget the pleasure part, because sometimes it can be really beautiful things that happen where you're like, whoa, that's exactly what I want it to feel like. Now let's make that happen more. So yes, I had a lot of painful moments, but I also had just so much pleasure. And so I kind of like to talk a little bit about both. So an example of a pain point would have been the moment that I remember just kind of I wouldn't say losing my temper, but do you ever have it where you just feel like you can't control the situation and you get elevated? So I had an employee that I was working with, and I was appalled at how I handled the situation. Like, I just realized I had gotten so frenetic that my need to control things had gotten so high because I couldn't control anything in my life. And I didn't like how I was showing up. I'm like, I don't like this version of me. It doesn't feel good. I know I wouldn't feel good if I was on her side of the phone. So what's going on here? And that moments like that along the way caused me to step back. And so I always say, if we misstep along the way and we see it as a moment to just step back and get back into ourselves and figure out, what am I fighting? What am I fighting? It can completely change and shift because we minimize the damage along the way. And people are so forgiving when you just own your own crap and you don't repeat the same things over and over again, right? So I had many, many moments like that with my kids, with my coworkers, with my employees, with like all different kinds of things along the way, where I realized that I did not like how I was showing up. And that's actually where a lot of this started, is that this isn't working. I need to shift something. So it started there before I even realized the physical issues were all associated with the same root causes, which was all of the pressure that was being placed on. The cliff notes on my story, the kids lost their father, and grief is a complex and hard process. And it definitely worked its way through my home in interesting and difficult ways. And obviously, always to honor my kids' confidentiality, I don't talk about it in too much detail. But it's been a journey for us to kind of get to where we are. Being the mom in that situation, as you said, I have to keep it all together. But the reality is that need to keep it all together actually made me not as great of a mom. I wasn't present. So that's back to these moments of pleasure. What does it feel like when you're firing on all cylinders, right? That's the good moment. So that moment when your kid's just screaming and all of a sudden you just plop down next to him and you're just like, you have that moment where you just plop down next to him and you're like, hey, I can tell you're really pissed off right now. What do you want? What can I do for you? How can I be here? Like, you just get these moments where you don't need to fix it. You're on the floor next to him and you're like, I remember one time where I just said, I'm here as long as you need to be. And I just sat. She's like, I don't want, okay, I'll just sit here then. You let me know when you're ready. And screaming turns into tears, turns into, let's have a real conversation about what I need, right? So how do you be with that and not internalize other people's issues, whether they're your kids or your coworkers as your own? You get those moments where you feel like, God, I was super mom, or some of those different things. And those are those moments of pleasure where you just feel present and things just start to flow. All of a sudden, you're not worried about business because 4 new clients crossed your desk, because you're just there. You're not doing it through checklists and to-do lists. You're just showing up. And when you show up, things happen. Magic happens.
I really, really enjoy that statement because it's so true that we can be on autopilot. We miss the moments, we miss the magic. And I never really thought of, huge pivotal moments as moments of pleasure too.
Mhm.
I often associate it with, negative things happening, and then you make change and you make shifts. But you're so right that just positive things and really taking in the pleasure, because then we program our minds to seek more pleasure and more presence. So
Yeah.
it's great. Talk to me about what it means to be in flow.
I love that question. Being in flow is this idea that I know exactly where I need to be and what I need to be doing. It just is. It just happens, right? You're not second guessing yourself. You're not looking at, well, is this more important than this? And this is like a lifelong journey, I think. I'd be
Mhm.
lying if I said I'm in flow 100% of the time, and anyone who
Yeah.
tells you they are is lying. But this is what this work is about, is spending more and more and more of your time in that flow. That doesn't mean I don't have to-do lists. It doesn't mean I don't have vision boards. It doesn't mean I don't have plans. But it means instead of really overanalyzing everything in them, I look and I just instinctively know that thing on my list is the right thing for me to be doing right now. Or that thing that's not on my list is the right thing for me to be doing right now. My energy's aligned to it. I'm in the place where I can do that really successfully. It's good for my life. This is a good thing to be doing. Then why overanalyze it? Just do it.
Yes. Yes, just do it. And I think there's so much strength for high achieving people that, and type A personalities that do all the things and, expand and we're meant to grow and evolve. And that's really healthy, but also giving us those moments to pause and to be in
Mhm.
flow and to not overanalyze and to just be, because often we're doing and we're not being.
Yeah.
And there's beautiful energy that comes from the source of being. When you work with your coaching clients that are high achievers, entrepreneurs, even a corporate job, any kind of job that's just kind of busy, what are the things you notice when you work with people's energy, and how do you reset it?
That's such a great question. Well, one thing I want to say is everybody's energy is different. So I really like what people need at different phases in the journey is always different. But if I were to helicopter it out and kind of look at themes that I see, the first stage is being willing to accept a little bit of help. Like, let me take
Yes.
that burden off your plate. And so when I first start energy work with clients, more often than not, it's really about creating hope. Let me take that. Let me remove that. What if we release that? What if I cut this cord? What if I let that go? Tell me how that feels. It's about creating this cycle of realizing, wait, I don't have to be in this or this feeling. It doesn't have to be this way. And so it's just about opening those doors. And depending on where people are at, that door may be really small. It might be a tiny crack or busting open, or it may be, I'm ready, right? I'm wide open. Just make this stuff happen. But that seems to be often where the first step is. After working together for a while, people start to get into their bodies a little bit more and get more realization and self-awareness. But sometimes that can be a heavy load. They're like, it's a lot. It feels like they're carrying a lot. And so then it's about, okay, how do we lighten this burden while you're doing the work? So now I want you to really understand the work doesn't have to be so hard. It can be joyous. So how do we make it a little bit more joyous, but you're doing more of the work on yourself? And I'm supporting that. And then as we go through, there gets to be the point where I just get to hold space for you and say, now you're doing it. I'm
Mhm.
here for you. I am here for every stage of this journey, but the next step's on you. And there is nothing that I can do to take that or to make that easier on you other than give you a smile, pat you on the back, and send you out into the world, right? With some tips and
Yes.
some advice. So there's a point where people have to do their own work. And that is often where the big breakthrough happens, where they realize, wait, I can do this for myself. I do not need an energy worker to always work on my energy. I can
Mm.
actually get back into alignment because they're learning how to work with their body in a different way. And then it moves into growth, empowerment, and expansion. Now we get to the really fun phase of now how do you take it and start really running? And then it becomes more about those periods of expansion and growth. I call them the contract and expand.
Mm.
Right? We get this when you have a tension, it's just your body telling you there's the next phase of something to get worked on that you are going to be able to grow into. And so at the moment that you figure that thing out, the tension releases, and then you get this rapid, beautiful expansion where you just get to enjoy it. And so my goal is to make the periods that are feeling tense as quick and painless as possible so that you can really enjoy the whole expansion process because it's fun. It really is fun and it needs to be joyful or you won't keep doing it.
Yeah. And I know know with my session with you, I was like, dig for gold, whatever you notice, like like I was wide open. I'm like, whatever you notice, I trust you, just, do your work. And it was a long session and I got really, really tired after. And I realized, okay, this is part of the process of letting go. This is processing, what's coming up. And it was a beautiful journey. And I think we don't realize how off our energy can be until it's aligned again. And you spoke about alignment. And I think for people that want to make big freaking changes, we got to have proper energy and we have to have alignment. And sometimes I call it we take aligned action. So it's not just any action, it's aligned action that's going to get us into momentum. And when we have that clarity, it just, like you said, you can expand and it's beautiful and it's amazing. And you can feel when you're in that state. I'd love to know about your biggest big freaking changes and how your energy was in those processes.
So I always say there's the changes we initiate and then the changes that happen to us that then catapult us into initiating changes as a response and a reaction. So I've got a couple of both. So the biggest change that happened to me was really becoming a single mother. And I thought it was going to be easier. I'm a go-getter super mom and hard worker. I got this all under control. It was scarier than anything I could have ever imagined to just not be able to to give the kids back and say, can you take them for a day or two? Can you, great, it's your weekend. I just need to get myself recentered and figure this out. But navigating that shift to it being all on you and figuring out how to be both the nurturer and the disciplinarian all at the same time and not having a second person where you can kind of figure out how to share that load and stuff as a co-parent was really difficult. I was divorced, but I was dear friends with my kid's dad. And so we worked together on everything. The loss I had with him in so many different ways was bigger than I expected. And I had to set that aside to support my kids' loss. And so that process of shifting and changing and what I did to change myself to be able to show up was my biggest change, even though I didn't precipitate it. And I love change. So I have precipitated change throughout my whole life. I tend to change careers every couple of years. I'm like an expert change person. So for me, it was learning to sit with something that I couldn't change and then change the things that I could. It was really understanding what is it that I have the capacity to change and then making that happen.
There's so much power in that, realizing, there's change that we choose, that we get to plan for, prepare, execute, enjoy, adjust, pivot, whatever. And then there's life. And life happens to us that changes us, sometimes temporary, sometimes permanent. And, your comment that you love change, I believe is like 5% of the population. And I talk about it in the book that change is really hard for people. But then there's this like unique set of people that thrive off change and they get bored if they're not changing. And I joke that, maybe they don't even have a comfort zone or it just keeps expanding.
Maybe we're running away from something. Maybe we're running towards something,
right?
It's all different sets of things depending on the day and the week and the year.
It's so true. And I remember connecting with you in our session and I said, like this is happening in my life right now. I feel this, talk to me about your experience and you shared and you said this thing to me that I'm like, oh, that is good. That is wise. You said, the lesson I needed to learn at this point in my life was this, and your lesson may be different. And I was like, oh, that is so real and so true that sometimes we just assume that, you can have a similar situation and assume that you're going to have similar lessons, but we're all on our own journey. We're going to have pivots, detours, reverse, go, all of that. So that was a really great moment for me to kind of reflect. And when I work with my clients and even just showing up as a leader, I often pause now and go, okay, what do I think their lesson is right now? And I could be totally wrong, but I actually am intentional to go, this isn't my place to tell them what their lesson is, right? And it's hard as a leader and as someone who has a lot of empathy and wants to troubleshoot. You can also take away people's autonomy. And that's what I'm learning is like, you have to support for them to get to their realization at their point so they can have alignment and they can feel free and expansive. When you work with your clients and you clear their energy and they're ready to step out and make their biggest change, what kind of things do you notice? Signs, symptoms, traits, any kind of similarities when people are making a significant change that you notice?
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing I like to say is, we all have different associations with our nervous system, right? And there are different emotions and what we respond to. But I like to think of anxiety as really just our body running really fast and maybe even a little bit ahead of us. Does that make sense? So like we
Mm-hmm.
have this feeling of electricity running through our body. That's like it's running out there and you're like, come on, slow down. I need you here, like not out there because we're kind of separating, right? In that space. And that's a really common thing I call it the speed. It's the speed of our nervous systems and our hormone systems, right? Running on overdrive because we're dealing with so much newness. And that's a completely biological function, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have these beautiful parts of our brain that are meant to protect us and keep us safe from threats. And the unknown is traditionally seen as a threat. That's just the way our brain works, is it sees the
Yes.
unknown as a threat evolutionarily. So its instinct is to kick into that fight or flight response, that cortisol inducing response and all of that, which then creates this freneticism. But when you sustain that over time, it can basically start to run away from you. And
Mm.
our goal in dealing with change is actually learning how to feel all these feelings, process all these things without the nervous system going on overdrive for an extended period of time. We want the nervous system to have that initial reaction and say, oh, that's interesting. Let me feel that. Let me allow that. Let me allow it to flow in and flow out. Let me feel the activation of that sympathetic system and then the relaxation of the parasympathetic system. You're really learning how to flex between these different nervous systems so
Mm-hmm.
that your body can learn that it's okay to be on edge. It will relax, it can
Mm-hmm.
release, it can let go. And so once you do that, your ability to handle change goes up because you can handle more coming at you without internalizing it and storing it. Instead, it's just in and it's out.
Mm-hmm. I really, really appreciate that statement. In my book, I talk about emotions taking 7 to 10 seconds to process through your body and chemically, right? Chemically speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Often after a couple seconds of extreme discomfort, we try to block it, we try to stop it. And if we could learn to just count to 10. So I started doing this with my children when they're getting angry. I'm letting them be angry. I'm letting them process it. And I will call out the emotion to say, hey, are you feeling a little angry right now? So that they can identify and they'll say, yeah, I'm feeling angry. I say, okay, let's feel the anger and let's count to 10. And it is crazy if they do that with me, how it's gone. Like they are like this, and then it's like, okay, yeah, I'm ready to have my smoothie. And they just keep on going on. But if we try like before, even like a year ago, I would get uncomfortable when my kids would fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk about having positive energy with them. And I'll say, you guys, our energy is not good. We need to correct our energy. Let's work together to have better energy. And I usually, I mean, I talk about that all the time with my kids is our energetic state. And after reading a few books, I was like, oh, I got to teach them how to fight and how to repair. And through relationship, it's connection, it's disconnection, it's rupture, and then it's repair. And I think a lot of us don't know, myself included, really how to go through the repair phase effectively, appropriately. And that's just been an awareness for me as a parent to go, okay, I don't need to jump in and save them all the time, but I got to give them tools that they can fight fairly, they can advocate for themselves, they can take accountability, and they can repair and let go.
I want to just honor that. Like, as a mother, I'm so happy that you're doing that, like, as a parent so early, because it is so important for our kids to learn that their emotions are safe and that they will come and go because you're programming something. I made the mistake when I was going
Mm-hmm.
through this period with my kids. I was so overextended. My nervous system was that I couldn't tolerate anything, right? I was
Right.
so fried same thing. When there was fighting, my system activated and I wanted to either scream or hide under a bed, right? It was just not a healthy response or reaction. And so it took me getting my own nervous system under control to be able to hold space for their emotions. So the fact that you're doing this so young is beautiful. I actually work with multiple kids under the age of 10, where I
Mm.
work with either them or through their parents. I'm working on their energy, but also supporting their parents on how to be with them.
Mm.
And I love when they start this young because it's
Yeah.
really giving them this practice so that they grow up with their nervous system being conditioned to handle that. So that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just something that I don't know why I didn't think about. Like I've always intuitively, worked with my children as energy, like not you're being bad
Mhm,
or talking about behavior, but I would get a little uncomfortable with the negative emotions.
mhm.
And now it's like, no, we have to learn to process it. And if my children can count to 10, as adults, we can count to 10. And it's actually shocking when you're in a heightened state and you're like, angry or really devastated or grieving or sad or disappointed, is to call out the emotion we're feeling. Like, I'm feeling very disappointed right now. And I'm going to count to 10 and I'm going to like let the hormones and let the chemicals and let my body react. And I'm going to choose to let it go. It's been very powerful. Talk to me about your biggest, I know you've been an entrepreneur. You're starting a new practice. You work with a lot of different clients. You have herbalism, energy work. You're just so well-rounded. But talk to me about the best advice you would give someone when they're trying to make a really significant change in their life.
Yeah, sit with it. I mean, the biggest thing is that when you're making a change and you talk about, I love the way you talk about it, like getting out of the wings, right? And stepping out, taking that first step. And when there's resistance to taking that first step, sometimes don't focus on the change, find the resistance. Find the resistance and work through the resistance. Because if it's if that resistance is simply a lot of, this is why I can't, 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 then it's like, okay, so what is the reason that I can? How do I release some of that resistance? How do I get through some of that root so that making change is easier for me? And that is a huge, powerful way, I think, to get through and get out of the wings when you're like, I don't know why I'm still standing on the sidelines.
Yes.
I know I want to make this change. But I'm struggling. Don't be afraid of the resistance. Lean into it. Be like, you know what? That is an interesting piece of resistance. Let's sit down and let's work that through. Does that make sense? So that you can get over that hump to get out on the stage. And then sometimes, frankly, it's just getting out. I'm going to actually tell the resistance, I'll come back and visit you in a month.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go out there right now and get it done. But if you find you're not still after, like, I still don't seem to be doing it, just sitting with that and saying, okay, what am I resisting here? Because it's often not the things that are running through your head.
Exactly. And I want to know, how do you get people to that awareness of the resistance? So let's say, they want to quit their job, find a new job, same industry, a shift, and they're resisting taking action. They're resisting updating their resume, applying for new jobs, showing up for interviews. How do we know what we're really resisting?
I love that you asked that question. I usually start by going back to, hey, so you're resisting, applying for jobs. What about that is either serving you? So you can look at what about staying where you are right now is serving you, or you can look at it as, what about that thing is freaking you out? Well, if I go in and do it, and what if they don't like me? Okay, let's talk about that. Does it really matter what people think of you? Is that, we got to get to the root cause of what it is that you're afraid of, because it's often not the going out and getting an interview. It's maybe their rejection, or maybe that you won't present yourself as well. And so you kind of have to figure out, but is that serving me? That fear of not, of what people think of me, is that serving me right now? I love Arthur Brooks' statement, because this is a common one, what people will think of me. And Arthur Brooks has a great quote. He goes, the world would be a whole lot more happy. And this is not exactly what he says, but if people spent more time caring about other people and less time caring about what other people think of them. So different things like that, like figuring out what's the root of it. What am I scared of? And then just allowing that to be and say, okay, so I'm scared of that. Cool. Is that going to define me? No, I can keep going. I can be scared of that thing and keep going.
Yeah, I talk about acknowledging our fear, and I'm really being mindful about embracing it. So we can't just remove the fear. I think there's a myth that, you just acknowledge it, let it go. It's like, well, it's still there. But identifying what we're really scared of, and often we will brainstorm on all the things that can go wrong. And I love to shift the perspective to go, okay, well, what are the things that could go right? Like, if you take this action and you make this big freaking change, as BFC, as we call it, what might go right? And when we get excited, because the same physiological response is happening in the body when we have fear and excitement, but our brain labels it. So let's acknowledge it, but let's focus on the excitement of the possibilities, right? We're open to those possibilities.
I love that. I love that. Fueling that fire for, like we talked about, pleasure earlier.
Yes. Yeah. So Jenny, tell us about where people can find you. How can they learn more about you? And if they choose, they want to do some energy work, some alignment, herbalism, you kind of take it from a holistic approach on wellness. Where can they find more information about you?
Yeah. So my website is hellojennylynne.com. That's Jenny with a Y and Lynn, Lynne. So Lynn with an E. So it's HelloJennyLynne.com is probably the easiest way. And then on there's a lot of different ways to contact me. You can message me, my email, all that stuff.
Awesome. And Jenny, before we close, I'd love to know your definition of courage. Like, you've had to really embrace a lot of courage as you've navigated some really hard changes in your life. And I admire that about you. And after I think it was about a year and a half or maybe even longer since I've seen you in person, I could see the energy shift in you. And I was like, wow, like, you're really open, you're expansive, like your essence is different. And I believe it's because of courage. But talk to me about your definition of courage and how we access it.
I love that. Thank you so much, by the way. I appreciate that. Courage is knowing that you will be able to figure it out without knowing the answer. None of us really know all the answers or have all the answers. But when we believe in ourselves and we believe in our ability to mess up, to succeed, to roll with the life's punches, to become a little bit better each day, whatever that looks like, without blame, without judgment of self, but really that compassionate, accountable love of ourselves, then we can fully step into anything, because that is courage. Like, there is nothing that stops us then from leaning in. If it's the right thing for us to be doing, we feel that call, that nudge, we do it knowing that it will be okay. That's courage.
I really appreciate that definition. And I believe the more we flex our courage muscle, that confidence comes after.
I agree.
Yeah. So talk to me about your perspective on courage leads to action, doing, leads to feeling ready. We get, and the results is confidence.
So what I love about this is I actually see both. And the reason why is because I spent the first the first 40 years of my life, basically, maybe a little less than that, really focused on take action first and figure it out. I was homeschooled. I didn't really have a traditional education. I was basically told, okay, figure out how to get these classes. I did my own reports. I decided history lesson was going to learn about my family's ancestry. I was very self-directed, and the gift that gave me is the ability to just take a leap and say, well, figure it out. And I guess I didn't know any better. And that served me. That's why I'm so comfortable with change now, is I didn't have a lot of that programming that a lot of folks have, that society says, right? That you're waiting for someone to tell you what to do. It's like, no, I'm just going to do it and I'll figure it out. And you did that often enough that by my 20s, I was a consultant, because once you figure out how to do that, the consulting firms like to snap you up, because they're like, oh, she'll just figure it out. That's what we want. So I ended up doing a lot of consulting, which really helped encourage that muscle. So the first 40 years of my life was all about that. But my trick was I always did calculated risk taking. So I would spend a little bit of time thinking about the worst that could happen, the absolute worst that could happen. And I would say, can I survive this? Yes. Can I survive this? Yes. Can I survive this? Yes. Okay, well, then I'm going to do it. And so I would take a moment to do this risk analysis and then set it aside. Because once I had a number and a face and, like you said, label, I didn't need to give it power anymore. It was there on a back shelf in a Word doc or a spreadsheet if I needed it, and I would just move. And that gave me the courage to move through things that would, work differently or not go right. And now I'm in the phase of my life, and I think there is a shift that happens at some point where if you start your life out one way, where you're very, methodical and slow about changes, you get pushed later in your life to jump. And I think if people start with jumping, they get pushed to learn to wait. So I think we go through shifts. So in this half of my life, I'm much more about let's be present with where you're at in this journey and get you across that line at a pace and a rate that feels really good to you. And so that might actually be sitting with the resistance a little bit more, or sitting with things a little bit more. So I kind of believe in both, and it really depends on what lesson, back to our other conversation, what lesson do you need to learn? And I've had to learn both. So I get to help people figure out which way is the best way for them.
Yeah. And I love that you really focus on an individual approach, and that you look at the whole human. And we all have stories, we all have pain, we all have messy parts of our lives. We have opportunity, we have challenges, and it's really what we do with them. And I think you're a remarkable person because of the way you have overcome many challenges, and you still do so right now with love and light in your heart. And that's a beautiful, energetic ability that you have, Jenny. So thank you so much for being here. To all of our listeners, thanks for joining us. Remember that life is a journey. We have to figure out what lessons do we need to learn when we are faced with different challenges, and to really flex that courage muscle, because confidence is on the other side. Make that BFC, and remember to take action and stop waiting to feel ready. Bye for now, everyone.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and would be so grateful if you could share it with someone else that could benefit from it. Let's remember to change our relationship to change itself and take aligned action. If we want to make meaningful changes in our lives, we need to embrace stepping into the next version of ourselves in the process. Remember, stop waiting to feel ready and start taking action today.